Hello, I'm Adam Buckingham, and this is my game, Backyard Astronaut. Backyard Astronaut is a tile drafting and placement game for 2 to 5 players that plays in about 20 to 30 minutes. In the game, players are amateur rocket enthusiasts competing to build the best rocket in their backyard out of parts they found in the junkyard. This video will give you a quick overview of how the game is played.
In the game, players will use tiles to build their rocket. There are a couple of different types of tiles, and each one scores a little bit differently, so I'm going to cover them all separately here. The first type of tiles are engines. Engines are what you need to make your rocket go somewhere, and of course you need fuel as well. Engines score based on the number of engine icons times the number of fuel icons that you have available on your rocket. Science scores points based on the number of unique science symbols on your rocket squared. There's one science symbol on your pod to start with, so there's a maximum of 25 points from this type of tile. Control devices help control your rocket or enhance other parts. These score points based on other parts that are attached to your rockets. Utility parts provide resources that are used by other parts on your rocket. The fuel tank and crew pod provide fuel for your engines. The solar array and the crew pod provide energy for your science devices and control devices. And finally, cargo just provides a couple of extra points for your rocket. Now you'll notice here that several of these parts have a little symbol in the upper right. That represents a brand or a suit, as also indicated by the color in the background of each tile. You'll notice that the cargo provides 2 different colors. This will become important later in the game. Once you have a part, you need to attach it to your rocket. Attachment of a part will depend on the border for that part. The crew pod here has all green borders, which means that parts can be attached on any side of the crew pod. This fuel tank here has green borders as well. Green borders can be attached to other green borders and can have other parts attached to them. Let's put the fuel tank below the crew pod. The temperature sensor has yellow borders on the left and right, and it's blank on the top and bottom. Yellow borders can be attached to a green border, but cannot have other parts attached to it once it's attached to your rocket. A blank side cannot have any parts attached to it and cannot be attached to the rocket. Let's put the temperature sensor next to the crew pod. Cargo has a yellow border all the way around. Again, yellow borders can be used to attach to the rocket, but cannot have other parts attached to them. Even though the temperature sensor is blank on the bottom, we can still attach the cargo below it, next to the fuel tank, because we can legally attach it to the fuel tank.
So let's talk about how the game is played. This is the setup for a 2-player game. At the start of the game, each player starts with a crew pod and 2 parts in their reserves. They also start with 10 markers that represent currency in the game and can be used to buy parts. In the center of the table, we have a junkyard. The junkyard is made up of a number of piles equal to the number of players, with 9 parts in each pile. Throughout the game, players will visit the junkyard to pick up parts and then bring them back home and attach them to their rocket or keep them in their reserves. Parts at the bottom of the column are going to be free for players to take at any time. If a player wishes to take a part that's higher up on the column, they need to pay a number of points equal to the number of tiles on top of the part they wish to take. For example, if the first player wanted this fuel tank, they would have to pay 1 point and give up one of their rocket pawns in order to take the fuel tank. Once they have the fuel tank, they can either put it in their reserves, up to a maximum of 3 parts total in the reserves, or they can attach it directly to their rocket. In this case, we'll attach it below the crew pod like this. It's now the other player's turn, and they also visit the junkyard. They want this parachute here, which is on the bottom of the pile, so it's free. They can take that part and put it directly on top of their crew pod. Okay. It's now time for player 1's turn again. In this case, player 1 wants a solar array, which they can get for free, but they want a red solar array, so they're going to pay 1 point to pull the red solar array here. We'll talk about why a player might do that in just a moment. Now they don't want to add this to their rocket right away because it has yellow sides, and that means that other parts can't be attached to it once it's attached to the rocket. So they're going to place it in their reserves for now. Instead, they're going to take this G-force meter out of their reserves and add it to their rocket right here. So that's a sample of how the gameplay might proceed. Players will continue to play like this until one of the piles is empty, or in the case of a larger number of players, until half the piles that are available have been emptied.
The final thing for players to think about in the game are public objectives that are available to all players. These come in 3 different varieties and score points differently depending on the color. The orange goals on the left are given to the first player to achieve some sort of a goal. In this case, the first player to attach 2 science devices and provide them with power. The green goals are given to the player with the most of something. In the case of this tile here, the player with the tallest rocket will receive 10 points. The second tallest and third tallest rocket will also receive points. The final type of objectives are color-based objectives. These give you points based on the colors of your parts. In the example here, players will receive 2 points for every part that's attached to another part of the same color. These points are combined with all the points that players earn from their rockets to determine who wins the game. So that's an overview of how to play. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy Backyard Astronaut.